Hello, hello.
God, I love your intro.
Thank you. That was the long one. Kicking by a little time. Oh my gosh. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Lorenzo and Shapeshift World. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. This is amazing.
Awesome. All right. So let me do the housekeeping. So first of all, welcome everybody for joining us live. This is Tech Talk with Lorenzo and Friends. So this is one of the shows that I do, many things that we're involved in, but Tech Talk with Lorenzo and Friends. And we're super honored today to have one of my favorite people in this whole world, besides Mom, right? So sorry, Mom, if you're watching. And we're going to talk a lot of just, this is going to be, it's going to be so far from tech, but yet it's going to have tech involved. And I think what we do as a regular part of the show is we really bring in technology as just part of the journey, but it's not the journey. The destination is our soul. The destination is who we are. The destination is how we show up in business. So I'm super honored because not only does this person influence me and guide me and love on me through business and technology, but she has these master superpowers in all kinds of different areas. So one of the areas she does are superpowers, and we're going to do intros, and then we're going to talk about different things in the 3 segments. But the first segment, we're saying, hey, how do we get to know Sabine? So first of all, Sabina Mesner is, again, a friend, a compatriot, a business technologist, strategist, but she is really a soul purpose provider of brands and personality, and she helps you become the person you're supposed to be. You're destined to be. You're living on purpose. So Sabine Mesner, welcome to the show. So glad to have you. And
thank you. Such a great intro. I really love it.
So let's start with, how the heck do we meet each other? How do we know each other? And a little bit about your version of our background, because I have my story, and we'll bring in yours. So talk about how we got together and what you do, and just a very high level, and then we'll dig into some details.
So yeah, I was trying to remember how many years it's been that we met. We met at a local conference event here in Phoenix, and we basically clicked. Like, we had an opportunity to go out for dinner. Maybe it was five or even 6 years ago. I want to say it was 2016. And at the dining table, at the dinner table, we were sitting across from each other, and I remember you looking, and you being the power manifester, 5-1 power manifester that you are. You said, like, I think you have something that could be very useful for me, and that I think I need, as I'm sort of like expanding into not just the next version, the next level of my business, but actually really the ultimate version. And I think that most of your listeners have heard of Stephen Covey, the famous author of the 7 Habits of Successful, Highly Effective People. He, in the 3rd habit, is begin with the end in mind. And that's exactly actually what we did. We met and we talked about your big vision, your big picture at the Starbucks the next day or so.
Yes, we did.
And then we basically said, okay, let's partner up. Let's actually, put the soul and the purpose, those are 2 distinctive sort of currencies, if you so will, into this fantastic business vision of yours. And that's actually how the Shapeshift company was born, and the Shapeshift World, which is a community of like-minded, soul-based entrepreneurs, was really sort of like initiated. You had all of the technology, all of the apps, all of these ideas. So it wasn't like, you needed me, to generate those, but the soul wasn't really in the business picture. And then, the other piece that came in, you met your love. You met the true love of your life, and you're now happily, sort of like, together with Karen. And that was another piece of the soul purpose, really coming into that centerpiece.
Super cool. So hold that thought, because I'm going to take you back, right? So that's that's the future, and that's the middle portion of where our life has led us. But let's go back to, tell us a little bit about you, right? You're not from America. You were not born here. So tell me a little bit about your lineage, and really the sort of the relevant facts around how you stepped into your space and place to get here. So I would love to hear that.
Super story. I love your questions. Oh my goodness, it's a whole new angle that I get to experience. So yeah, as you can all hear from my accent, I'm not from from Arizona, certainly. I grew up in the south of Germany. I'm actually from the Black Forest, which is the most southern western part of Germany, which is another way of saying it's an hour. If you drive an hour west, you end up in France. An hour south is Switzerland, and 2 hours is Austria. It's also known as the three-country corner. Absolutely beautiful, idyllic, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous countryside. And I grew up on a farm, very, very close to nature, with my grandmother teaching me about all of the herbs and all of the sort of like natural things. And it was really the most dreamlike childhood. And yet as I was growing into a teenager, I had very, very strong yearnings, almost like to the point of like, they brought me sometimes to the brink of depression, because as much as I loved, my village and my family and my sort of surroundings, I had a dream to go out into the big world. And in fact, it was even sort of fueled by Hollywood movies. I even had sort of like the dream of like, I needed to go to Hollywood and become an actress, and these dreams were very, very real. My father, I should also mention, was a very prolific inventor. He actually had various patents. One involved a car engine that ran on 2/3 of water and only 1/3 of gasoline. So you have to also imagine that not only was this sort of like an idyllic landscape, we were sort of envisioning free energy. We were envisioning the future of our basically not only of our lives, but also of our collective. And so my father and I, we really have that soul connection in terms of the big vision. And so tragically, he passed away. And when I was only 17, of a brain tumor. And I made a very powerful pledge, unbeknownst to myself, actually, at his funeral, that I would live a life where I could die any day, knowing that I had fulfilled my highest purpose. And that was such a powerful pledge that it really sort of brought in sort of like a tectonic shift, talking about destiny. That was actually your very first word in the intro. Like, let's talk about begin with the end in mind. How about we actually begin with the ultimate end, which is that soul destiny, that soul destination. And that's when that trajectory shifted for me. I should also say, before he passed away, he was actually in a coma. And there was something incredibly sacred that happened during the couple days that he'd spent in a coma. We were with him at this clinic, and I was very, very close to my dad, and I just really was devastated that he was about to depart. I just couldn't even fathom, what that actually meant. And I actually sort of was sitting there by his bedside, looking at his face and still feeling that connection that I've always had with my dad. Like, I would look in his eyes, and we were just like, we just clicked. And all of a sudden, that connection wasn't there anymore around his face. And I watched him literally leave his body. I was drawn to observe his heart. And then after a couple of hours, the connection wasn't there around his heart anymore either. And then I looked around, and I was like, has he already left his body? And then I saw a cross with Jesus at the corner, in the corner of the hospital room. And I looked over there, and that's actually when he gave me a message. And he said, that he is, that it's going to be all right, and that he will be around. And so he was really allowing me actually something extraordinary, which is the witnessing of the soul culture. And that's also, Lorenzo, when I received my soul sight. So since then, I actually have the gift of multidimensional sight, because a part of my soul actually left with him. and went past through the veils that we normally don't see through. So not only did I make that pledge that I would live my own life, like I could die any day, knowing that I had fulfilled my highest purpose, but also he gifted me this power tool of knowing that this body is not it. We are the soul, and that the soul is eternal, and that when we really sort of like lead our life from that place, we step into our greatest superpowers, and that's really the energy behind the fuel. I was then guided by my soul. I put my soul into the driver's seat very, very early on. So we're talking 17, 18. I moved to Berlin, where I studied art. I graduated with magna cum laude, with a master's in visual communication from the University of Arts. I was there when the wall came down. I was literally in front of the Brandenburger Tor, got lifted up onto the wall. And then I had the next sort of guidance, and that was to come to the United States, where I had the amazing opportunity. This is the kind of stuff that you can't make up. These are out of the world opportunities. I was co-launching the very first online magazine in the world that is not an overstatement. Wikipedia, features my name. We launched the first online magazine 2 weeks after Netscape went live in October 1994. So these are all ideas that I was able to create. And talking about technology, my master's was simulating the World Wide Web via a computer animation before it actually technically existed. This was in 1993, and it was called Fishing for the Heavenly Body, where I correlated the 7 ISO layers of the internet with the 7 stairs to heaven. So my point here is that technology, for me, is an interwoven ability of the soul. The soul is actually the ultimate technology. The soul is the ultimate AI.
Exactly.
And so the internet is in a way a mimicry of the web of life that we are tapping into when we actually have that soul interdimensionality.
Love it. Wow. Okay. Where do we go to unpack all of that? Let me just start with this. For those listening live and in the recording, is Sabine not one of the greatest seers, master powers, superpowers you've ever met? You can hear in the storyline all of the things that she's done, but she's also followed her calling, but basically followed her guidance. And the guidance that we have, I believe, comes from your soul and many things. But what's really great about all of that is that Sabine talked about that dinner. Go back to the dinner, was with another lady named Joanne Garzielli and your husband, Leslie. And the 4 of us had dinner. And that was a powerful table, because when we talk about human design, we're going to come back into that in another segment in detail. But I really want you to understand, people, that Sabine is here to help you. Okay. Let me just repeat that. Sabine is here to help you. We talk about gifts. We talk about other opportunities, but all of that's all tied to the ability to then tap into who you are and how you show up so that you can serve and live in purpose. That is just masterful. And when we come back and after this next break, I want to talk about how you helped me craft my business in a different way. So how we got to Shapeshift, and there's just so much to do. You got to come back. I got to ask you now. You got to come back. But let me just close this segment with, as you started to look at your work and as you evolved, right, and as you decided to take your business to the next level, give us a little sneak peek on what that looks like right now, so that what you're doing based on all that work, right, the body of work to get to this place. Because life is a journey, right? You don't just end up and go, I'm superpower. I got this great stuff, right? You have to earn it. And what I believe in life in general is if you don't earn it through respect and experiential learning and meeting people like you and others, I was in a transformational place. You showed up exactly when I needed you, right? And that's why I'm so tethered to you and tied to you, and vice versa. I think I've showed up for you in different ways over time.
100%.
The really important message I want to get to before we break is, tell us what you're stepping into and why it's so important in today's times. and then we're going to come back and talk about human design. So tell us who you are and where you are today, because that's really important.
Today, my work has really, like you said, sort of really accumulated, if you so will, or really I've found my groove. And the groove is different from the niche, but it would be basically that sort of like application, right? I'm really anti-niche. Lorenzo is giggling because I know I made so much money with my talk, the sickening truth about niching and why having a big purpose does not fit into a narrow niche.
Exactly.
That's actually how I launched my soul purpose branding business. But the groove that I really am in now and will really be in for the rest of this incarnation is what I have coined soul purpose wealth. And the formula is as follows. So the first thing that you really need is to know who you are, which is your soul, right? Your soul. The second thing that you need to know is the purpose, like where, what's the task that you have actually assigned to yourself pre-incarnation, right? What is it that you set out to do and to achieve? And we can see that obviously in human design. It's also in your astrology. There are many different access points. You could look at it through the lens of the Akasha, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Our approach, and that's what we have also in common, Lorenzo and I, is that we're passionate about human design because it's literally giving us the code, literally the engineering codes to the soul's DNA. Most of which, by the way, little side note, is playing out in the shadow zones, but that's because we've been cast into the darkness. And now it's time to come into the light. So that's exactly why that formula leads then to wealth. So you would basically, the way I see it in my brain is soul plus purpose, which is also the feminine being plus the masculine doing, and that action, right? Taking that inspired action, bold action, and having that in that absolute alignment equals wealth. And wealth is not just money. Absolutely, it has to include financial freedom. But Lorenzo, you know me now since a couple of years, and it is not an overstatement when we're saying that my husband and I travel 2 months out of the year. So in a sense, we live a millionaire's lifestyle without having had the need to create the headache of $1 million business overhead and all of the liabilities and all of the responsibilities. And yet we are living that financial and personal freedom. We love to travel. We love to also share our space. We have a lot of, social life. And we continue to do that. That's our number one priority. Freedom is the number one priority.
Love it.
So that's basically the work that is, that I'm doing. And that's what I'm also helping people to achieve.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So what I want to come back, we're going to do a break. I want to come back. I want to talk about human design. I'm actually going to bring up my human design and let you talk about human design in general. But I want to close with this segment with this is one of the things that I have found in my life's journey. And one of the things that I needed in people that needed to show up emotionally and spiritually and in a soul space was Sabine, right when I needed her. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I have made millions, tens of millions of dollars multiple times. And in every time I wasn't in alignment with my soul. So eventually, and I'm just going to tell you this is something that Sabine will speak to all of you about at some point when you want to talk to her, is that if you're not in alignment, eventually you're going to get smacked down. Eventually it won't work. Eventually your life is going to come to its own form of challenge because you're not in alignment. It was only after I got it completely in alignment, which is a personal journey I started, like Sabine. She left the country. I left my wife, my life, my everything else. I left the job. I left everything to get in alignment. And today I feel very blessed and very humbled to be in alignment. And how that started, and one of the core values for me and the core understandings for me was understanding human design. And so Sabine will help us through that and a soul journey when we come back. Hang in there. We'll be back in a minute. Okay, we're back with Sabine Mesner, my good friend, the Soul Purpose branding expert, the Soul Purpose anything, the Soul Seer. I've got so many different names I can share with you. You have so much talent. You have so much talent. So in this segment, I really want us to take a few minutes to understand human design. And I'm going to throw a little curveball at you because this is fun.
Okay.
So we're going to have some fun. So I'm going to share my screen, and I actually have my chart. I have my relationship chart with Karen, and I have Karen's chart. Yeah. So I thought it would be really fun, and just keep it high level, but just on mine, just talk about the basics, like what does the chart look like, and then kind of just do what you do well, and I'm going to share all of that. Super. And let's just have some fun. So here we go. So hopefully you can see this.
Yes.
All right, and so. Just what are the basics of human design? Sabine, talk to us.
So the basics of human design, firstly, I think I want to really say that we need to always look at the source first, right? Like you have that engineer and software developer brain, right? So before we dive in, let's just kind of step back and really appreciate the fact that it is actually what they call an extraterrestrial system, meaning it is not necessarily derived here from a person figuring this out here on Terra. It has come from an outer realm, if you so will, right? So it was, in quote unquote, downloaded. So Ra, who was also a manifestor like you, was basically contacted by some sort of higher being or sort of like energy field, and over the course of 7 days he was literally almost like taken over, and this information was downloaded through him, and then he sort of plotted it out and had all these maps and all of these things. And now comes the kicker. This system synthesizes all of the 5 wisdom schools that we have ever known here on the earth plane. So that includes, and first and foremost, the tree of life, the Kabbalah, how everything is connected to source or not, right? Tree of life. The chakra systems, we all have energy centers in here, right, that we're not really utilizing in, say, for example, the medical field, the medicine field, and certainly not enough in business. Currently, if you're familiar with the chakra system, we're looking at 7 energy centers. Here in Lorenzo's chart, you're already seeing 9. And ultimately, it's the return to the 12th chakra, 12-strand DNA humanity. Currently, we have 7 chakras and 2 strands DNA, but that's not the true picture of the soul vehicle that's representing the body. The soul body, rather. So we have the Kabbalah, we have the chakra system, we have, of course, astrology. There's all of, if you want to click on any of the conscious or unconscious, you can see the planetary constellation at the time of your conscious birth, and also the planetary constellation that represents your unconscious. So that includes astrology, because that's how it syncs up with your natal chart, as an example. Then we have the DNA neutrinos, and let's see, what's the 5th one? Oh, of course, the Ijing, the Book of Changes. The Book of Changes is said to be over 5,000 years old. And here's the kicker, Lorenzo, let me show you this. I have, I shared with you about my journey, my story. The Ijing has been with me since I was 13 years young. I abused this ancient wisdom on my sort of first boyfriends and first loves to figure out, for much. But
they're part of the checklist. You either read it or you don't.
So the irony is, the Ijing has been in my life for all of my life, for as long as I can remember. I'm actually convinced this is even past life knowledge. But here's what the Ijing represents. There are 64 hexagrams, okay? 64 hexagrams. They look like this. And they correspond with the 64 human genomes. So in other words, this is literally the energetic code, the sequence that we are looking at when we're looking at the human design. So now most people, because human design is trending like crazy, everybody wants to know, okay, what's my DNA? We go to 24andMe or figuring it out, Ancestry and whatever. But we also want to figure out what is the soul code, because I want to get my life to work. I don't want to constantly run into the same problems, right? But most people that are teaching even human design are just looking at that again as that insulated system. And that's not my approach. My approach is basically human design right now is a super nifty tool. Thank you. Thank you for having downloaded this, because we had a bit of a disadvantage. So much has already been sort of like stripped away from our awareness. It's almost like that blank hard drive. We didn't have enough, utilities to run sort of like disk upgrades, right? I'm using sort of like technology analogy here, but this is very, very true. We are very, very similar to the technology that we are surrounded with, and that's why we need to stay in that master seat and actually take charge of it. Otherwise, the technology will actually take charge of us, and that's a little bit sort of like that motivation that I also have in really empowering people to not only crack their code, live their code, but then also, like you said, master their code.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so for those who are as lost as I am, sort of, let me say two things. One, is she not masterful in how she's weaved in? This is a holistic approach to you. Right? So this is so being absolutely takes a holistic approach to your soul work. Okay, so let's set that aside. It's a whole nother show because that's a masterful. What I want people to understand is that what I believe to be true, and Sabine can speak to this. I brought my chart back up. Is that human design, while this has a few complexities or a few areas that we want to talk about, some 3 key areas, it's the first and the easiest way to get a general sense of who you are. Right?
Yes, so 100%.
So what I would like you to speak to, look at my chart and then talk about just the sort of the whatever makes sense about the energy centers, and then talk about the 5 types. And then I'm going to scroll through and show my chart and Karen's chart, and you can just kind of give some opinions around why that's helpful, because this is great for a relationship. Because you can't, so I'm going to, before you speak, I'm going to say these things. You can't be a great partner. You can't be a great human being. You can't live on soul purpose until you know yourself and you love yourself. And human design is here to help you love yourself.
So we're looking here at a manifesto design. So Lorenzo has, from the chakra system, he has his open root, his open generator center, his open spleen, open will. The things that are defined here are basically incredible psychic insight. So this is the purple, represented in that purple triangle. So he is hardwired into receiving precision insight through his third eye, through the inner eye. So he has that past life mastery of being a seer as well. And that information directly goes into the throat, which is the manifestation center. And this is what makes you such a powerful speaker and manifester. So as you're also speaking into basically your intentions for the clients that you're, for example, working with, or the community, it doesn't come from some sort of like agenda. It comes literally through that inner soul side. This is now also connected to that diamond shape, which is the key. Most people don't have that actually defined. So it takes rare constellations in the sky to have that defined. Most people have it open, but less. Lorenzo is a knower. So in that heart center, he has built-in knowledge, built-in knowing. And if you have ever worked with him, you know that if he knows something, you cannot convince him otherwise. It's like, forget it. You just have to, we have to run with his knowledge. We have to almost like really, he has to bring the codes in. Insight, manifestation, knowledge, and then he has a defined emotional center. And that's really where that emotional drive comes from. But that emotional center, which is that right triangle over on the right, you have to really see that his emotions are really guided by those higher those higher energy streams. So that's how I would basically define that without getting into the channels.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want to keep it super, super simple, high level. So what you said, and I want you to just quickly to talk about the energy centers, the 9. If it's in the gray color right now, that's considered to be undefined or open, undefined or open. And then the colored centers are defined. And can you just speak to that really briefly? Because then I'm going to have some fun, right?
Appreciate that. I love how you guide me. So everybody has a fan, certainly here in Arizona, or you know what a fan looks like, right? Mm-hmm. So you can set the fan to 2 directions. It can either sort of pull energy or wind, towards it, right? Or it can push wind out, right? Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how I would like for you to think of these centers, regardless of their shape. Either they are pulling energy in, that means they're open and undefined, so they are receiving, or they're pushing energy out, and now they are constantly like a fan. So imagine right now, Lorenzo, when he steps into a networking circle, he has certain receptors where he wants to hear from you. He wants to be, receiving certain information. But then there are 4 fans that are constantly on there, hardwired together with his channels. And this is like how the wind will blow from Lorenzo's corner. And this is really true for all of the people. My husband, for example, has only 1 channel. And so that's always on, and everything else is very, very open. So I don't know if
love
you
it. No, that's perfect. So the key takeaways, so there's open and receiving. So you're drawing into energy in those different energy centers from others. So when a person, a partner, a friend, a brother, a sister, whomever come into your ethos, your area, your space, their energy is going to get pulled into your energy center in those open centers. The converse is true, and the defined centers are always on. And so defined by definition is you're always on, they're always thinking, they're always plugged in, they're always running. And therefore, it's harder to get swayed or get influenced by the energy of the other person because, as Sabine said, I'm kind of hardwired in certain areas where I'm, as a manifester, I speak to that. So I'm going to ask you to do, so that's great. So just, those are basic. These are like ABCs, folks. The other thing I want you to take away here is, Sabine, talk about the 5 types. The 5 types in just high level so that we understand roughly what they are. And then I'm going to bring in Karen's chart. We're going to talk about her and then the combined chart.
Very, very good. Beautiful. So the 5 types in the human design, think of them as different vehicles. So a big truck, right? Big truck, 4-wheel truck, maybe a cabriolet, 2-seater cabriolet. So that's literally how the types sometimes feel, when I'm really connecting with them. They're designed for different purposes. So not all cars, are meant for the same, all cars drive, right? All cars drive, and it isn't sort of like a setback if somebody is a generator and another person is another type, but they're all designed to actually achieve unique, special things. And many, many times we find ourselves in a situation where it's all one size fits all for all 5 types. I think this is the first benefit that people will receive from that human design revelation, is that they go like, oh, wow, I'm actually that type. I'm not supposed to do that. I'll leave this to the other people, right? So what are the 5 types? So the most common type are generators. Generators are basically designed in such a way where they don't necessarily have the magnetic currency to hold the purpose, unlike, for example, manifestors and or manifesting generators. So they're looking for that external guidance. They're looking for that external sort of input. They're designed to plug into a bigger whole. Now, you could plug into the company and you could say, hey, I work for IBM, and that's my role. Or you could plug into a spiritual system, or you can plug into a belief system. Does that make sense? So generators need to be plugged into a bigger picture. They are always looking like, where can I plug in? Tell me what to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
right?
So I'm going to stop you because you're doing a masterful job, but this is for something we're going to talk about in the next segment, which is a workshop. So here's what I want you to do. So very quickly. And so I just brought Karen's chart up. And so I was a manifestor and Karen's a generator. And in her energy center, right, is defined as red. So in generators, and the combination of generators and manifesting generators, they make up, I think it was like 70% of the population, roughly. And so Karen's chart shows her centers and her lower portion of her energy centers are all defined. So she's plugged in, running, wired all the time. So just for the record, and I'm just going to one tip and one tip only, is if your energy center here in the red, if I'm saying it correctly, is red and defined, you're a generator or type of generator, which means you're going to go and go. I call it the ever-ready battery. You're going to go and you're going to keep going. You're going to have fun. You're going to do it some more. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the day, you might crash, or you do one or two more things, and then you might crash. And then you get up in the morning, you do the same thing over and over again. That's my simple definition. But that's a generator, and that's a lot of people. And in my world, in my relationship, my partner I'm a manifestor and she's a generator. And when we combine our charts, we get the astrological combination, we get the energy center combination, and now this is how we show up as a collective. So I'll let you give your thoughts around this, but what I simply want the audience to take away is that whoever you are and whoever crosses your path, and whatever day, week, or month they do that, there's an energy exchange, and that's part of what human design describes and defines for you. Is that fair?
Absolutely, and you did a beautiful job, really, talking about the generators as sort of like literally, like the word says, generator, really generating the energy. So they're really the people that make everything go around for everyone, for all of the other 4 types. So kudos to generators. I do also want to talk a little bit to the general sort of frustrations that generators can have because they're all looking for that bigger knowing, but it's almost this eluding thing. So they have to really like come to this, really good understanding of how they're designed, because if we're constantly looking outside, it can become sort of like that merry-go-around that can really lead to that burnout. But now to the specific relationship chart, what I love about your match, Lorenzo, with Karen, is that, remember, you had all of the open centers, the root, the second, and the spleen, and Karen has them defined. And you also can sort of like, she has her own knowing, so she can sort of like neutralize your knowing. You can come to a joint knowing.
Yes.
That's fantastic. She has also defined energy centers, so she can also balance out there. And she has a defined manifesting center. She's a 3-5 generator, and she's very, very dynamic, very accomplished, very, in a good way, nuanced and complex, right? And can kind of run with this. And where you are open together as a unit is higher guidance. And in a way, you also have that open heart center, which is basically really making ultimate space for God's divine source, whatever you want to call it, inspiration. So it's almost like, as a unit, you're not closing the door to that higher inspiration. You have it wide open. You basically have that receptivity for higher guidance, and then also are living in a way where it's almost like your free will is actually much more surrendered to the divine will. So it's literally, as a couple, you become, I can see how you're serving the communities, because Karen does that in her own right, with the eWomen network, So this is exactly what everyone is basically feeling around you, is that there is a higher cause, a higher purpose, and also that surrendered, compassion that comes from that open heart.
Yeah. So let me summarize this to say what Sabine has just shared with you, and I thank you for doing that and playing along. Right, this was unscripted, so I caught you off guard on purpose. But what Sabine is basically saying is human design gets you a sense of who you are, and gets you a sense for who you are in relationship to others. And as a result of that knowledge, that information in our tech talk, that data, that information that you need is another filter, another lens for you to really understand how you show up and how you should potentially show up for others with others. So human design is just fun for me and all those different aspects. So we're going to come back, and there's so many things that keep going. We'll have to do a whole nother show about soul purpose branding because we don't have time for that. So when I come back, I want to talk about what does it look like when we look at the 5 types and we do a workshop and we make this information available for free. Because if we can't serve you and gift you, then we are not leading by example. So we are going to lead by example. We'll come right back.
Wow, Lorenzo.
Okay, welcome back. Welcome back. So you got to have, this is like Sabine seeing her baby birthed. Okay,
I
so
know.
this
I could cry right now. I have to really, be sort of like, keep it together, because I mean, this is like all animated now. And this was the vision that we a couple of years ago really, coined and stepped into. It's amazing.
So let's touch on that, and then let's go into what we're going to work together going forward. So what Sabine and I did, and in that meeting, that tabletop meeting, and then that follow-up meeting where we had coffee, we sat down and we talked about. Is that me?
We talked about what?
I hear my echo. So what we had talked about is how do I take all this vision and bring it together?
Mm-hmm.
In a way that makes sense, right? Because everything I had was integrated, but didn't make sense just quite yet. So long story short, we created Shapeshift World. We did a soul journey. We found it. You made it happen. We got some really great process that you went through, and you tapped into my journey of where I needed to go. So I'm just going to leave that because that's a whole nother show. But what I want people to understand is in that journey, Shapeshift World was born. And Shapeshift World energetically now is a place where we talk about the power of we elevates me. Mm-hmm. It's in the Aquarian age. It's about collaboration and cooperation. It is a defined and designed business and business name to shift the way you think, to shape your world, to shape your life, to shape your day-to-day world. And so what has happened over that time, and when we first met, human design was one of the first topics that we had a chance to meet and talk about. So what I've now come full circle. So Sabine has studied under Shatan Parkin, Human Design for Us All, masterful. He worked with Ra for many, many years. And I say is the world's leading living expert on human design.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion.
I agree. Yes,
yeah,
I agree.
My opinion. One man's opinion. He is, and I'm now studying under him in human design. And so what has happened, and you talk about synchronicities and timing, as the life has come together, as Sabine has come together, she's now in a place, in a space of really gifting her experience and her knowledge in a way that is going to be masterfully impactful in a time where we're just stepping into the Aquarian age, where collaboration and cooperation is important, and we're seeing your soul to live your life's purpose every day creates gratitude in your attitude. Okay, so being grateful is one of the many things that I've learned over my last 5 years or 6 years of journey. So all of that being said, Sabine, again, I'm putting you on the spot here. We've already planned for a monthly seminar or webinar, right? And we'll make that available to you, and we'll have some information on to share in a minute. But the goal is to bring this to your life, you, the user, you, the audience, you, the person, so that we can help you step into whatever it is you need to, whatever part of the journey that you're on is why we're here and why we've come together, because our power, our collective, and I'll have to do a chart of us, our energies together, is palpable. And I love you from the bottom of my heart, from the deepest part of my soul. And I can't wait to do more work with you this year and in years beyond. So talk a little bit about what we're doing, and talk about the webinar series and about how you help people through the things that you do, on top of the fact that we're just going to share some information.
So I think the key word that you mentioned earlier is holistic, right? Holistic. We have all experienced, that we've been introduced to different systems, transformational systems, business systems, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what we really all feel in the core of our beings, in the marrow of our bones, if you so will, is that we got to integrate this, right? We can't do this separation thing anymore. It used to work better, but now the energetics are changing. Also, in and around, Earth, it's part of this ascension process into a completely different astrological age, the age of Aquarius, that really demands from us, and this is a non-negotiable, that we shall become integrated, that personal and professional cannot have the firewall anymore. So this notion of like 9 to 5, and then the weekend is for the family, all of that stuff is not really long-term supported anymore. So it behooves everyone to be proactive in this expansion that you also talk about with the Shapeshift World. And you have been a pioneer in this, because you've known this as a soul seer in your own right, in your own mind, for many, many decades, actually, which is why you put the apps and the tools together, and the time to put the puzzle together is now. Personal, spiritual, business, your physical health. We have a lot of stresses right now on the collective, on society at large, et cetera, around this topic of health. That's a central, sort of core theme, that we need to integrate. How we do business, why are we in business? Who do we do business with? It's got to be healthy. It's got to be holistic. And that's the only way forward, and the only thing that will be sustained. So I think what we want to achieve in this webinar that we got so excited about is that we want to take basically your business community that may be looking at expansion through technology, marketing, et cetera, and we want to just do a little bit of a timeout and invite you to come in and to not have that sort of like idea of like, oh, this is like soul stuff or spiritual stuff. I really don't have time for it, but actually entertain this idea that this could be that magic secret sauce, like that makes it all kind of, fall into place.
Yeah, love that. So let me layer in my view of this as well. Is what I kind of started to, but I'm going to repeat it because it's worth repeating. Your business will not flourish. Your strategies will not flow. Your opportunities to attract the right people, partners, friends, clients even, will not happen unless you're really stepping into your own personal awareness and enlightened journey. You don't have to, again, it's not spiritual, it's not all this stuff. You don't have to do all this cool stuff, but knowing human design and being aware of it will change you for life. And the reason it will is because it'll give you an understanding, if nothing else, of how you show up, a little bit about you, because sometimes people like to know about themselves, but really it's how you show up and how you evolve for the rest of the world. So for your clients and your team and the people that you work with, human design is a tool. Human design is a tool to look at bringing people together. So we're gonna flip the switch here and go, all right. So I'm gonna actually do Q&A, but I'm gonna make you do it differently because I got an agenda. So I'm a manifestor. There's manifestors are what, right? 9-10% of the world, right?
Yep.
Manifestors are what? Here to inform and not just talk, but basically create awareness, right?
Yeah, to have the vision. The manifestors are really actually holding that quantum field, that bigger vision. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the next type is but in order, is manifesting generator. So a manifesting generator is the person who can manifest. They can also generate, and sometimes that's the most difficult design, the way I say it, because you don't know, am I making shit happen or am I generating it? Which one am I doing? And you have to be in flow.
I'm a manifesting generator. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm executing my own manifestation. So I'm generating my manifestation, which I hold. I tell you, it's a trip and a half being 2 designs in one, manifesting generators. Big shout out to you if you're one.
Yeah, exactly. We love you for a reason. It's tough for you. And the third of the types is generator, which we talked about. That's Karen and others, and they just go, go, go. The fourth type, which we haven't talked about much, is a projector.
Yes.
And that's Leslie. Right?
My husband, yes.
Your husband, Leslie. And so talk about what is a projector and what's different briefly between the projector and the other types.
So the projectors are not supposed to generate. So they're not supposed to be in that doing world. Oftentimes, of course, in corporate and careers and what have you, they have also gotten caught up in this like do, but ultimately the projectors would be basically the CEOs. They would be the big picture people. They are actually said, hear this here, that they are actually from the future. So projector souls, from my understandings, are actually souls that wanted to be way showers, guides, not so much be caught up in the nitty-gritty everyday life, but basically the people that say this way. And so for projectors, it's very, very important to project the vision, right? So they need to basically show that picture. And so that's really their function. They're the ultimate guides, the ultimate way showers, really. And they are usually the ones that are finding themselves in the back of the room, waiting, to catch the attention of the busy generator. So there's a lot to discover about that dynamic between projectors and generators.
Yeah, I was gonna love it. It's the thing I talk about, the way I describe it is the person is at a 3-day conference meeting, hasn't said a word for 3 days.
That would be
all of a sudden somebody asks them, they say, "Hey, Leslie, tell me about what you think." And in less than 5 minutes, they've solved the problems, I've answered the things, they've targeted everything, and they're like, "Why didn't you say something earlier?"
Where have you been all my life, right? But I mean, we have to sort of almost like look to the back row, not the front row. And say like, okay, tell me more about who you are and what you have going on.
The tip is, if you have a projection in your life, you have to invite them in and you ask them questions, okay? And the last and the most rare of the design types is the reflector.
Yes, reflectors are completely open.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just going to go. So talk about a reflector.
There is the astrological constellation is so phenomenal that it's basically all they had to basically, I don't know, find these moments when basically none of the channels when everything is wide open. And so what they're really doing here is they're sampling. So they're sampling the consciousness. For them, they're the least tethered to the physical body. They can also have, for that reason, because right now we live in a very stressed out world, you could even say to some degree toxic world, they often deal with health issues. So they have to be very, very discerning what they're actually sampling, because they don't have that fan, that inner circuitry and machinery to push things back out. Does that make sense? They're kind of oftentimes like sponges and can find themselves like almost, in health or psychologically challenging situations. Yeah. The purpose of the reflector, however, is to probe, to see if people are doing the right job. I'm very guided and gifted that I have a bunch of reflectors that are always keeping an eye on me, and they're poking me sometimes. And I basically say, okay, are you for real? Is this in integrity? And I love that I have them around. Firstly, it's a compliment to have a reflector that sort of shadows you a little bit. But then secondly, whatever they're pointing out is, for me, almost like as if God would be sitting on my shoulder and be saying like, hey, why don't we kind of fine tune this over here a little bit? Amazing assistance for the integrity and the overall health of an organization. So if you are a CEO or you have a larger team, find out if you have a reflector in your team and give thanks. I mean, that is, it's a gift from God. I truly, truly believe that.
Yeah, love that. So a couple added points. One is reflectors are less than 1% of the entire population.
Yeah, it's so rare.
There's only one. So knowing a few is amazing. And like you, I've been very blessed to have some great reflectors. But the other way I describe it, Sabine, correct me if I'm wrong, is reflectors like a mirror. they're going to reflect back your energy. So when you're with a reflector and they're pissing you off because they're saying stuff, they're basically showing you to you. And that's the beautiful part about that in all kinds of ways. Well, I'll leave you with this thought, because one of the reflectors in my life is a branding expert, and he would basically reflect back branding and logo design and everything else. He basically reflected back my soul to me. Now I go, you're in the right job, right? Because at the end of the day, the role that you play in your business or with your soul, human design can give you an understanding if you're in the right job or doing the right things. So it's just endless. So we're going to have workshops. I've got my information up here. The reason I do that is because if you want to know human design, you want to get access to it, please do that. Get connected with me. Obviously, you can find me on the show and everything else. And then also, Sabine has been so gracious to bring into her world gifting of some really amazing additional education. And if you go to basically website, SabineMesner.com/shapeshiftgift, SabineMesner.com/shapeshiftgift, and you can get access to this information. You'll get information on our webinars. We are here to serve, okay? And as Sabine, if you were here at the beginning of the show, you'll realize that is my design. I'm here to make a difference. Absolutely. I'm here to serve, and I can't help myself as a manifester. I'm also, as a 5-1 manifester, which we'll get into in the workshop, I'm all about systems and solutions, and I'm all about inquiry, right? So my unconscious one gets in the way for everybody because I ask questions about everything. I ask questions about questions. I guess that's why that I'm kind of good at this show stuff, because I want to know, right? So Sabine, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to say goodbye and share any final parting thoughts. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. We have our next workshop in July. Check us out on that. And from now on, I think we're going to do one a month because I have too many people checking in on this. So talk to us.
I can only say in closing, first and foremost, how much I love and appreciate you in terms of everything that we set out to do and achieve together, but also for you specifically, you have done and then some. I mean, it's really been, I mean, you're like a bedrock in the communities that you serve, and I'm in awe, and it's a great honor to sort of not have only help you launch the bigger picture, the puzzle pieces of Shapeshift World, but also now to serve inside of this container. Can you imagine how gratifying that is for me? To sort of like have midwifed something, and now all of a sudden, I'm in the Shapeshift world, and I'm like, oh my God, look at all of the things that are inside of this world. So come to our human design workshop and have an experience of like looking underneath the hood of your vehicle, right? Your human design type, and we promise you, if you enter the information, right? So we have basically time to look at your charts prior. Then you can ask us any question, right? On the call, and we will absolutely together rock your world and give you that precision sequence that you can then go out and use and better your world, better your holistic life.
Thank you. Your information's there. You can watch the replay, share this with others. I appreciate and love you. Best to Leslie, your husband. Can't wait to see you guys in person again. All right. Bye for now, everybody.
It's so amazing. Thank you.
Take care.